They thought they had me pinned. They thought my silence was their shield, that a woman who kept her head down would never lift it in a room with bright lights, and a judge who asks hard questions. They were sure the door they closed on me would stay shut. It didn't. What they didn't understand was this. The day you turn a home into a cage, you also hand the caged person a reason to find the key. That's how this started. And that's why it didn't end the way they planned. My name is Maya Johnson. I'm 56 years old. I was born and raised on the east side of Baltimore, where the bus brakes hiss at dawn and the corner store knows your favorite brand of tea. I'm a black woman, a daughter of a nurse and a bus driver, and for 30 years I worked as a senior bookkeeper for the city parks department. My hands learned to trust numbers because numbers don't lie when you line them up right. I've got a brick house with white trim and a small yard where I grow rosemary because my grandmother said rosemary helps you remember. I used to think of myself as steady. Plain, maybe, but steady. The night my son knocked on my door, the rain was hard enough to drum on the porch rail. "Ma, can I stay for a while?" he asked. His name is Darius. He was 33 then, all sharp cheekbones and a voice that can charm a cashier into forgetting the line behind him. His marriage had just fallen apart. He looked younger than his years in that doorway, damp and tired, the way a boy looks when a thunderstorm chases him home. Of course I let him in. I made soup. I laid out fresh towels and gave him the spare room with the window that catches the morning light. I told him, "Stay as long as you need. When your child comes to you bent, you become the brace." It felt simple, and simple felt right. The first weeks were gentle. Darius took the trash out without me asking. He drove me to the store and carried the heavy bags. We watched old game shows after dinner and laughed at the same corny jokes. He thanked me for little things. "Thanks, Ma, for the soup, for the ride, for the talk. You know those first warm days after winter when you open the window and the air feels kind?" It was like that. Then small things began to shift. So small I told myself they were nothing. "Let me hold your debit card for a bit, Ma," he said one afternoon. "I'll run the errands, pay the bills online. You worked your whole life. You shouldn't be waiting in line at the bank." That sounded like care, and I liked being cared for. I said yes. He slipped my card into his wallet like he was putting it somewhere safe. He started setting his own order to our days. "No need to walk with Miss Lee this morning," he'd say. "She talks your head off and keeps you out too long." He said it with a laugh, but the next morning he parked my shoes by the back door and moved the leash into the closet, like the walk had been canceled by the weather we couldn't see. At church he stood close and squeezed my shoulder when I greeted people, as if to rush me along. "We got things to do," he'd murmur. "We'll catch up next week." I told myself it was his way of being efficient. Plenty of sons are bossy when they think they're helping. I didn't want to make a fuss. A few months in, a woman started coming by more often. Her name is Kiara. She was pretty in a neat way. Smooth ponytail, no chipped nail polish, a soft voice that folded at the edges. She never looked me in the eye for long. "We're staying on top of things for you, Miss Maya," she liked to say. "Darius has a plan, and it's best if we stick to it." I wasn't sure what the plan was, but it sounded organized, and I have always loved a plan. Bills were paid, though I didn't see the receipts anymore. Groceries showed up, though I hadn't made the list. When I asked for my card back once, just to pick up a little gift for a church friend, Darius laughed it off. "Ma, why make 2 trips? Tell me what you need, I'll get it. Easier for both of us." Easier. That was a word he used a lot. Easier became the blanket that covered every new rule. I started to notice the house sounded different. The TV was louder. Darius's phone calls bled through the walls. Fast talk, easy promises, a tone that made me picture him smiling even when no one could see him. Sometimes the front door opened and closed without a word hello. I would look up from my book and feel like a guest in my own chair. When I asked simple things, "When are you back?" or "Did you get my medicine?" the answers got shorter. "Later. Handled. Don't worry about it." I tried to be grateful. He had been through a hard thing. Divorce shakes a person. Maybe this was just him rebuilding his steps. So I cooked more. I kept my voice light. I told myself, "You raised a good man. Let him be in charge of something. It'll make him feel strong again." Women who have raised sons will understand what I mean when I say you can love a man so much you forget you're a person too. Little by little, my world shrank by inches, the way a sweater does if you wash it in hot water. I didn't feel it at first. I just woke one morning and realized the sleeves didn't reach my wrists. I kept my routines where I could. Every Friday, I wiped the baseboards. I set my pillbox a week at a time. I watered the rosemary until the dirt went dark. It comforted me. Numbers and plants follow rules. People don't always. One evening, I asked Darius if he'd seen my checkbook. I kept it in the kitchen drawer with the rubber band ball and the spare batteries. The drawer was neat but different. Papers I didn't recognize, a folder I hadn't bought. "You don't need that old thing, Ma," he said without looking up from his phone. "We do everything online now." His tone made me feel childish, as if I'd asked where the sun went at night. I laughed to cover the sting and said, "Guess I'm old school." Later, when he was out, I opened my laptop and logged into the bank. It took me a while to remember the password because we'd changed it together, for safety, and now it lived in his head instead of mine. When the numbers finally came up, I stared at them the way you stare at a face you know but can't place. The balance was lower than I expected. There were charges I didn't recognize, names of places across town, a hardware store I'd never been to, a series of online transfers that read like code. I told myself there was a good reason. There's always a good reason at first. I closed the laptop and pressed my fingers into the groove of the table, the spot where my late husband once caught his ring and left a tiny scar in the wood. I used to rub that scar when I missed him. That night, I rubbed it because I missed myself. The next morning, Kiara made coffee in my kitchen and handed me a cup with both hands like it was a gift. "You doing okay, Miss Maya?" she asked. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "We're trying to keep you from worrying." I wanted to say, "Worry is how I know I'm awake." Instead, I said, "Thank you." Because thank you is a safe word when you're not sure what truth will cost. If you had walked by my house that week, you would have seen nothing odd. The lawn was cut. The porch light clicked on at dusk. The mail stacked in a neat pile on the entry table. Everything looked fine, because I am very good at making things look fine. But I had already started to do what women do when the ground moves. We count. We count the small changes. We count the yeses that feel like no. We count the times we swallow words that taste like pennies. And even if we don't say it out loud yet, a question begins to tap at the back of the mind. When did helping turn into disappearing? That question is what carried me, though I didn't know it then. It's the question that turned a quiet kitchen into the place where I would learn to speak again. And it is why those who were so sure they had already won had no idea what storm they had walked into. If you asked me to point to the exact minute helping turned into disappearing, I couldn't. It wasn't a storm. It was a slow leak. By the time you hear the drip, the floor is already soft under your feet. That's how the rules arrived in my house. Quiet, small, for my own good. And if you're wondering why I didn't shout the first time, I was still trying to believe there was nothing to shout about. Darius started with easier. Easier if he held my card. Easier if he paid the bills online. Easier if the mail went to paperless so I wouldn't have to sort it. He signed me up for autopay and said, "Ma, no more late fees." I thought, when did I ever have late fees? The thought passed and I let it pass. Because I was proud of being a woman who didn't make trouble. I've been that woman my whole life. Let me set up your phone too, he said. Face ID is safer, and if you lose it, I can ping it. He held it up to my face, tapped a few times, and that was that. I didn't notice right away that I didn't know the new passcode. The first morning I needed it, I stood in the kitchen with the phone in my hand and a blank in my head. Kiara saw me and said gently, "Want me to open that for you, Miss Maya?" I laughed like it was silly, like I was the one who forgot. They rearranged small things. My pill box moved to the higher shelf, so the grandkids don't get into it. Though we don't have small kids over. The leash went into the closet, so you don't trip. My spare keys ended up on Darius's ring, just in case. The camera doorbell appeared overnight. For safety, he said, installing a second one in the hallway. You watch too many crime shows, I joked. He smiled and said, "Can't be too careful." Careful meant I was expected to tell him where I was going, text me when you get there, and come back when he thought it was time. When I took too long at church, he texted a dot on my screen. You okay? You're still there. I told myself it was love. Maybe it was. In his mind. Maybe it was love bent into the shape of fear. At first, when I asked for my card or to see a receipt, he'd tease me. You trying to audit me, Ma? I got this. The teasing had a thin edge. If I pushed, his voice sharpened. You forget how much I'm doing here. Remember when? He would start a story I didn't want to hear, a years-old mistake I was ashamed of, and I would soften, eager to prove I was grateful. I told myself keeping the peace was a kind of love, too. The house felt tighter. Darius didn't like visitors. He'd stand a little too close if Miss Lee from down the block came to the door. We're on a schedule, he'd say, guiding me away with a hand at my elbow. On Sundays, when Sister Ruth tried to pull me into a longer talk, he'd cut in with, "Ma's tired. She needs to rest." He made it sound like care so I wouldn't argue. Money stopped being something I touched. He brought groceries, but I didn't see the budget. When the city sent a property tax notice, he scanned it and said he'd handle it. I asked to look before he clicked submit. He sighed. You don't trust me? The question was a trap shaped like a hug. I said, of course I do, because I wanted it to be true. The first real crack came on an ordinary afternoon. I was slicing onions for stew. He walked in, took one look at the counter, and said, You still buying the brand name stuff? It wasn't a question. That's wasteful. I said, calm. I like this brand. It lasts. He moved closer like he wanted to check the label. You don't know what lasts, Ma. I know what lasts. The words landed like pebbles in a jar. I set down the knife and said, Darius, please lower your voice. He laughed, but it was the wrong kind of laugh. I'm not raising my voice. You're being sensitive. Kiara stepped in from the doorway with that soft voice of hers. Let's not make this a thing, she said, reaching for his arm. We're all trying to help. I hated how that sounded, like I was the problem in a room where I had paid for every wall. That night, I opened my laptop after they went out. The balance had dipped again. There were transfers labeled external that left as soon as small deposits came in, like the money was only stopping to catch its breath. I took my phone to snap a picture and then remembered. My phone needed his face. I wrote the numbers down on a sticky note and tucked it into my Bible. I don't know why I chose that hiding place. Maybe I wanted something holy around my fear. The first time his hand actually landed, it surprised us both. Funny how I think that now. Surprised us both, as if you can divide a shock cleanly between two people. It was about the light bill. I asked a normal question. Why is it higher? Did we miss a payment last month? And something in him sparked. His face changed, quick as a switch. He reached, not hard, but fast, like he was pushing the air out of the space between us, and his palm caught my cheek. It made a small sound, like clapping in a classroom. I touched my face, stunned. He went still. "See what you made me do," he said. It was flat, like he was reading a line in a play. I slept on my back so my cheek wouldn't rub the pillow. In the morning, I put on foundation, heavier than usual. At the store, Miss Lee looked at me too long. "You okay, baby?" she asked, low. "I'm fine. Clumsy," I said. The lie was smooth on my tongue. I've had practice with smooth. After that, Darius brought flowers, a paper bag with my favorite pastry, a gift card to the craft store. He cried in the kitchen, quiet and angry at himself. "I just want what's best for you," he said into his hands. "You don't listen. You trust strangers before you trust me." He made himself the one who needed comfort, and I gave it. Because I am a mother and my reflex is to soothe. I cried too for a different reason. When he saw my tears, he said he hated himself. I told him not to. We both pretended that fixed something. The line between helping and handling vanished. He answered calls for me. If the city or the bank phoned, he put the call on speaker and led the conversation, because they confuse you with their jargon. He told the mail carrier to leave packages with him. Packages began to arrive more often, long boxes, padded envelopes, a stack of cheap spiral notebooks. "Work stuff," he said, grinning, tapping his nose like we shared a joke. "Side hustle, you don't want the details." He laughed, but his eyes were quick, checking my face for a reaction. I gave him none. I was learning to fold myself small in moments like that. Kiara started keeping a house binder on the counter. Tabs, calendars, a list labeled Maya's Care. It had my prescriptions, my doctor's number, and notes in Kiara's careful handwriting. "Watch for confusion in the afternoons. Remind to hydrate. No unsupervised ladder use." I read that page 3 times, like maybe the words would rearrange into something that didn't make me feel erased. "I am not a child," I wanted to say. Instead I said, "Thank you for being so organized." She smiled and patted my arm. "We just want to make sure nothing slips." Darius told people I was forgetful. He said it with a chuckle in front of the pharmacist, with a nod in front of our pastor, with a shrug in front of the neighbor taking out her trash. Ma's memory ain't what it used to be. He was planting seeds in other people's gardens. If I cried later, he called me dramatic. If I went quiet, he called me distant. If I tried to bring up the bank again, he called me ungrateful. Every word was a door that swung only one way. One evening, I caught him hunched over my laptop at the dining room table, 2 windows open side by side, my bank on the left, his work email on the right. He closed the lid like it had teeth. "Don't snoop," he said. "You'll just worry for nothing." The words were backwards. He said them while he was the one who'd been where he shouldn't. I stood there with the dish towel in my hand and felt how thin it was, how little protection it offered from heat. You might be asking why I didn't call someone then. Who would I call? What would I say? My son is very helpful and sometimes his hand slips. My son pays my bills and I don't know how to log in anymore. These are not police words. These are the kinds of sentences that get you a tilted head and an offer of a pamphlet. I wanted proof. Proof is what numbers give you. Proof is what I knew how to keep. So I began keeping small things. The date on a sticky note when a package came. A grocery receipt that slipped into my bag by mistake. The exact words he used when he said, "You won't even remember asking for this later." I started a notebook of my own, not as neat as Kiara's binder, but mine. I didn't know yet what I was building. A raft, maybe. Something to hold me when the water rose. Across the thin wall of our row house, the neighbor's TV hummed. Sometimes, late, I heard someone in her kitchen, the clink of a cup on a saucer, a window sliding shut. I wondered if she heard us too. The false cheer, the fast apologies, the old floorboards learning new footsteps. I wondered what she thought happened in a house where the porch light always came on time. If this were a different story, I would tell you I packed a bag that night and left. That's not the story I lived. The story I lived is the one where the next morning I made oatmeal and asked Darius how he slept, and he kissed the top of my head and said, "Good, Ma." And for a few minutes we both pretended. But even pretending has a cost. You begin to owe yourself. And debt, I know from a lifetime of ledgers, always comes due. The first person to see the truth in my house didn't live there. She lived on the other side of the wall, where the TV hums late and a lamp clicks off at exactly 11. She heard patterns before I had the courage to name them. I thought I was being careful. She knew I was being erased. And while the people inside my house were busy writing a version of me that was small and confused, the woman next door picked up a pen and started writing something else. Proof. Her name is Ms. Evelyn Parker. Retired teacher. Silver bob. The kind of posture that says she's corrected more than a few slouches in her time. One morning she caught me on the porch with the broom and said, low, like we were already in on the same secret. "You all right, Maya?" There was nothing dramatic about her voice. That made it harder to lie. "I'm fine," I said anyway, and hated how practiced it sounded. She studied my face the way teachers look at quizzes, checking the numbers, not the smile. She said, not buying it, and reached into her tote. "Take this." It was a pocket notebook and a pen with blue ink. "Write dates, times, words they say. If you want, I'll write when I hear things too." She didn't touch my arm. She didn't push. She just gave me something to hold that wasn't fear. Inside, the rules multiplied. The hallway camera watched like a red eye that never blinked. I tried to put a piece of tape over it once. Darius noticed before dinner. "Don't start with this," he said, a laugh sitting on top of a warning. "It's for your safety." He peeled the tape off slow, like I was the one being unreasonable with adhesives. Kiara's binder grew fat with tabs. She added a page called Observations. She wrote things like, "Forgets phone passcode," and "Easily overwhelmed in the afternoon." Reading it felt like seeing my name on a list of things to be managed, not a person to be respected. I wanted to tear the page out and crumple it. Instead, I started my own list, the one Ms. Parker had handed me permission to keep. I wrote small so more would fit. Thursday, 2:20 p.m. Package delivered. Long box. Friday, 9:05 a.m. Light bill handled. Refused to show receipt. Sunday. Told pastor I get confused. I didn't. It's funny what becomes a lifeline. A notebook. A sticky note hidden in a Bible. A flash drive you forget you still own until your hand finds it at the back of a drawer. One afternoon, Darius left my laptop open. He was moving fast. Doorbell, phone, a bag dropping on the table. So he didn't see me glance at the screen. The bank site was still up, cursor blinking. My hands moved before my fear did. I downloaded the last 6 months of statements and saved them to that old flash drive. I named the folder something no one would click. Church bake sale recipes. When I pulled the drive out, my fingers shook so hard I almost dropped it. I slid it into an empty tea tin and set the tin behind the flour. If you looked, you'd see a kitchen. If you knew, you'd see a vault. The body learns to speak in code when the mouth can't. After the day with the slap, I wore a scarf and called it style. I bought cheap sunglasses at the pharmacy and called it sun. Ms. Parker didn't ask for the story of the scarf. She asked, "Do you want a photo of what's under it?" The question made my stomach flip. "Only if you say yes," she added. "Only if you want it for later." I nodded. In her kitchen, she turned on the light over the stove. I took the scarf off and lifted my chin. The click of her phone camera was soft but final, the way a jar seals when you twist it just right. She printed it on her old home printer and wrote the date in neat teacher numbers. "This is yours," she said, putting it in an envelope with my name on it. "But if you want me to keep a copy, I will." I said yes. I didn't know what I would do with pictures like that. I just knew I was tired of telling a mirror I was clumsy. Darius started testing my edges in public. At the doctor's office, he answered questions before I could. "She forgets things," he told the physician with a chuckle. "We're keeping an eye on it." Kiara made her voice even softer, like a blanket being tucked in. "Sundowning, maybe?" The doctor, a woman with calm eyes and quick hands, turned to me and asked directly, "Maya, how are you feeling?" I said, "Tired." She asked, "Any changes with memory?" I said, "I remember everything I'm supposed to forget." It landed somewhere between a joke and a warning. She held my gaze a second longer than necessary and then, while taking my blood pressure, slipped a card under my purse strap. Later, in the restroom, I read it. Adult Protective Services. A hotline. A promise of someone answering. I slid the card behind the plastic of my insurance. When we got home, Kiara made tea and told me how brave I'd been to admit the memory stuff. I didn't correct her. I was saving my bravery for something else. Money kept moving like water through a net. Small deposits came in, then out again to places with names that sounded like shell companies or boutique errands. A metal parts supplier in a city I hadn't been to. A digital service with a name that meant nothing. I wrote each one down and drew little arrows in my notebook. The arrows looked like fish, all swimming in the same direction. I stopped asking to see receipts. Every time I did, Darius found a way to make my question the crime. "You think I'm stealing from my own mother?" he'd say, hurt blooming fast, big and noisy. "You can drown in someone else's performance if you forget you know how to swim." There were papers, too. One evening, Darius spread a stack across the table like menus. House insurance, refinance options, some forms to make things smoother if something happens to you, he said, tapping each with a pen. Smooth. Another of his favorite words. "Where do I sign?" I asked, and let him show me the lines. I held the pen and then put it down. "I need my glasses," I said, and went to my room. In the mirror, I watched my face reset into the one that doesn't scare anyone. I opened the bottom drawer, took out the small camera I used at church events, and snapped a photo of the first page on my dresser top. Back at the table, I read line 3 out loud. "This gives you durable power of attorney?" He made a sound, half scoff, half sigh. "It's just in case." I smiled like we were sharing a joke. "Then it can wait in case." I slid the papers into a folder and put it upright on the shelf with the cookbooks. "Tomorrow," I said. Tomorrow is a word full of doors. That night, I slipped the camera card into the tea tin beside the flash drive. Ms. Parker and I made a plan that looked like nothing if you didn't know it was a plan. If I needed help right then, I'd hang a dish towel on the porch rail. If she heard a thud, she'd ring my landline, and if I didn't answer, she'd ring again and then call. We chose words we could say out loud in a room with other ears. "Do you have any sugar?" meant, "Can I come sit at your table for 10 minutes?" "Can I borrow your casserole dish?" meant, "Please walk me to the curb and back." She gave me a spare key, not to her front door but to her back gate. "Sometimes the easiest way out isn't the one in front of you," she said. I slipped the key onto a ribbon and tied it under the liner of my purse. One afternoon, I heard Darius on the phone in the living room, voice slick with confidence. "It's already taken care of," he said. "Yes, it's her account. But she's not. Look, we're family." The sentence ran out of words and turned into a hum, like he was nodding to someone who couldn't see him. When he hung up, he stood in the doorway and smiled. "Everything is fine, Ma," he said, as if he'd caught my thoughts before I could think them. "You trust me?" The right answer was the same as always. I gave it. He kissed my head like a blessing and left the room. I sat very still and pictured the fish arrows in my notebook, all swimming toward a net I couldn't see yet. At night, I practiced saying true things out loud in a whisper. Not speeches, not accusations, just plain sentences, the kind that sound strong because they don't try to be fancy. This is my house. Those are my accounts. No. The last one felt wild in my mouth, like biting into a pepper. I got used to the heat. In church, I didn't sing as loud, but I listened more. The sway of bodies, the rustle of programs, the low thunder of the organ, everything solid and unsecret. Sister Ruth squeezed my hand and said, "You come sit with me next week." I nodded. Darius tugged my coat gently, a cue that it was time to go. In the parking lot, he said, "You okay?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Good." And we went home like a scene we had rehearsed too many times. You might be thinking, why all the small steps? Why not one big one? Because big steps need ground to land on, and I was building mine inch by inch. Proof. A plan. A person who believed me before I fully believed myself. I didn't know that someone else, someone I had never met, was also lining up numbers with my name on them, tracing arrows from one account to another, asking questions I hadn't learned to ask yet. The day that person called, the kettle was just starting to sing. But that's getting ahead of myself. For now, all you need to know is this. The story they were writing about me was getting longer. So was the one I was writing about them. And the pages were about to collide. The kettle began to sing right as the phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. Lately, peace lived in small silences, but something in me said answer. Maybe it was the tone under the kettle's whistle, that thin thread of sound that feels like a warning. "Ms. Johnson?" a man said, careful and steady. "My name is Marcus Green. I work in internal audit at Chesapeake Freight. Your son Darius is on our employee list. I'm calling because your name and bank account appear in a set of transactions we're reviewing." My grip slipped on the counter edge. "What kind of transactions?" "The kind that move in circles," he said. "Small deposits, quick withdrawals, refunds that never settle, vendors that look like they sell parts for machines we don't own, money touching your account and leaving again in minutes." He paused, letting the words find their weight. "Do you recognize these? Did you authorize your account to be used for company payments?" I watched the kettle spit steam and thought of my notebook. The arrows, all swimming one way. "No," I said. "I did not." "Okay," he said softly, like he'd hoped I would say that and feared it too. "Could we meet somewhere public? A library, a church hall? Anywhere you choose. I can show you what we're seeing. I don't want to alarm you, but if your account is being used without your knowledge, we need to move carefully. And please don't mention this to your son yet." I heard the hallway camera click, a tiny tick I had come to recognize as the house listening. "The Waverly Branch Library," I said. "Back table by the big windows. In 1 hour." He exhaled. "I'll be there." I turned off the stove. I didn't drink the tea. At the library, the air hummed with printers and whispers. Marcus was younger than his voice. 40, maybe. Neat haircut, sleeves rolled to the forearm, a leather folder on the table between us. He didn't reach for my hand or ask if I was okay. He put the folder down like a mechanic setting a toolbox where a car won't roll over it. "I brought redacted copies," he said, sliding papers so the sensitive lines were blacked out. "Dates, amounts, vendor codes. And I'd like to record only the part where you say whether you authorized anything for our compliance file. Is that all right?" "Yes," I said, because the truth needed shape. He tapped his phone. I gave my name and the words I'd been practicing in a whisper at night. I did not know. I did not agree. He pressed stop and set the phone face down like it might embarrass us both by ringing. Then he walked me through the map he'd drawn. See here? A vendor called Northline Components. We don't buy from them. But invoices were paid. The money hit your checking account as a refund to originating source, which only happens if someone changed the route. From there, it moved out through digital transfers. Same pattern with a service named Box Vision. Same with a third. The IP address used to initiate the transfers matches a device on your home network. Home. The word made my stomach knot. Who would do that with my account? I asked, and hated the way the question shook. He didn't say a name. He didn't have to. Ms. Johnson, he said. My job is to find numbers that don't line up. I'm not a cop. But our legal team will have to report this. If you didn't consent, you are a victim, not a suspect. Do you have copies of your statements? Anything that shows you raising concerns? I thought of the tea tin behind the flower. I have some things, I said. I can get more. Don't put yourself at risk to get them, he said quickly. He tore a page from a legal pad and wrote 3 numbers, his direct line, the company's counsel, and a case reference. If you talk to the bank, ask for the fraud department and use this phrasing, unauthorized ACH and Zelle transfers with possible account takeover. They'll know what to do. He met my eyes. Can I ask, are you safe at home? The library felt too bright. I pictured the hallway camera, Kiara's binder page labeled Observations, Darius's laugh that wasn't a laugh. I don't know, I said, and let the words sit there, heavy and simple. When I got back to my street, Ms. Parker was on her porch with a book she wasn't reading. She looked up, saw my face, and didn't ask anything. She just lifted her mug toward her back gate. The signal. I nodded and went into my kitchen first, putting on the kettle for cover. Then I slipped out the back, closed the gate with both hands to swallow the click, and crossed into her yard. We have a problem with numbers, I said as soon as the door shut behind me. It felt wrong to say Darius's name in a room where truth lived, like it might scratch the paint. I told her about the library, the papers, the map of arrows. I spread my notebook, my sticky notes, the photo of my cheek. She set my proof beside her own, the neat log of dates and sounds and the envelope with my name. The table between us was crowded with little truths that, together, looked like the outline of something big. 2 calls, she said. 1 tonight, 1 tomorrow. Tonight, your bank's fraud line. You don't need permission to protect your money. Tomorrow, the card that doctor slipped you. We called the bank first. I asked for the fraud department and used Marcus's words. A man named Ortiz came on. Calm voice, steps laid out like stones across a creek. We're going to freeze external transfers, he said. We'll place a hold on new payees. We'll escalate to our security team for device review. Please don't discuss this with anyone who might be involved. If you can, open a fresh account at a different institution and move your direct deposits there. He gave me a case number and a script for the branch manager in the morning. When I hung up, I realized I was still holding the phone like it might bite. Good, Ms. Parker said. She poured tea I didn't taste. Tomorrow we call Adult Protective Services. We can use my landline or go to the precinct. You choose. I went home through the back gate with my pocket heavy from notes. In the hallway, the camera's red light winked like a mean eye. Darius was at the table with Kiara, a stack of mail between them. He looked up and smiled too wide. Ma, we were just going through the boring stuff for you. You're welcome. He flipped an envelope. Light. Oh, bank mail. I'll handle. I'll read it, I said, and heard my voice come out steady in a way that surprised me. It's addressed to me. He tilted his head. That, are we going to have a problem angle? Kiara's smile tried to glue itself over the moment. We're just trying to keep your stress down, Miss Maya. I'll read it, I repeated, and took the envelope to my room. My hands shook after the door closed, but the sentence had stayed upright all the way from the dining room to the bed. I sat there with the letter unopened and breathed like I was learning how. The next morning, Ms. Parker drove me to the credit union on York Road. No camera in her car, no binder on her front seat. We opened a new checking account in my name only. I set a password no one could guess, my grandmother's middle name and the year she planted rosemary in the yard. I changed my direct deposit with the city pension office. At the branch of my old bank, I asked for the manager and used Ortiz's script. The words felt like a tool in my mouth, a wrench that fit the nut exactly. I am reporting unauthorized electronic transfers and possible account takeover. Please flag my profile. Do not allow new payees or changes without my in-person authorization. Back home, Kiara noticed the new debit card sticking out of the grocery bag and raised her eyebrows a millimeter. "What's that?" she asked, easy. "A recipe," I said, and smiled like we were sharing a joke. If she knew, she didn't show it. If she didn't, the room still felt like she did. At noon, I called the number from the card the doctor had slipped me. "This is Tamika," a woman said, voice warm but professional. I told her the short version first, just the bones, and then the longer one, with the soft tissue of shames and scares. She didn't interrupt. When I ran out of words, she said, "You've done more than most by the time they call me. You have proof. You have a witness. You have a plan. We can help you make it legal." She listed options: a protective order, a safety plan, a police report with photos and logs, a letter to the bank and to the company's legal team, referrals to a lawyer who won't charge me. "Do you want an officer to meet you somewhere you choose? Church office? Library room? Precinct?" "Church," I said without thinking. I wanted my walls. Detective Leslie Brown met us in the small room off the church kitchen, the one where we keep extra folding chairs and a smell of coffee never fully leaves. She wore plain clothes and a badge on a chain. "Ms. Johnson," she said, not ma'am or sweetheart, which made me like her at once. I laid out the tea-tin treasure: flash drive, printed statements, the photo of my cheek, Ms. Parker's log with dates and times in neat lines, the voicemail I'd saved where Darius said, "You won't even remember asking for this later." Detective Brown listened, asked simple questions, and wrote simple answers in a small notebook. She didn't rush me past the parts that hurt. When I finished, she said, "We can petition for an emergency protective order. It can set distance, control access to your house, and give you space to breathe while we investigate the financial crimes. I can't promise outcomes, but I can promise process." "Will he be arrested?" I asked. The word tasted like metal. "Not today," she said. "But today, we can start the paper that leads where it needs to go, and we can put your bank and his company in the same conversation." Ms. Parker squeezed my hand under the table, a quick press-like punctuation. We filled out the petition in the same room where church ladies label crock pots. I signed my name and felt each letter like a small door opening. Detective Brown took copies of everything and gave me back the originals in a new manila folder. "Don't keep this where he looks," she said. "Back of the linen closet, bottom of a flower bin. Somewhere that's yours, not the house's." When we stepped out into the hallway, the choir was rehearsing for Sunday. Voices lifted and tangled, then found each other like threads. I stood there a second longer than necessary, letting the sound run through me like a clean river. I wish I could tell you that was the moment I felt safe. It wasn't. Safety doesn't arrive like a delivery you can track. It's built, slow as trust. We drove home with the radio low. Ms. Parker parked one house down so we didn't pull right under the watching eye of the doorbell camera. Inside, the light had changed. The late afternoon kind that makes dust look like snow. The table was clear. The binder was put away. Too tidy. A minute later, the front door opened. Darius walked in with a smile already on, like a mask he'd practiced in the rearview mirror. He set his keys down and looked from me to the empty table and back again. "Where you been, Ma?" he asked lightly, but the question had a hook in it. I felt the new debit card warm against my thigh, the credit union receipt in my purse, the weight of the manila folder under the sink behind the cleaning rags. I thought of Marcus's map, Ortiz's calm, Tameka's list, Detective Brown's badge, Ms. Parker's steady pen. I thought of the notebook arrows, all pointing toward this minute. "Out," I said, and let the word be enough. He laughed. That wrong laugh. "Out where?" I opened my mouth to answer, but a knock came at the door. 3 firm taps, official and ordinary at the same time. Darius froze. Kiara's eyes flicked to the hallway camera, then to me. "Ms. Johnson?" A voice called through the wood. "Baltimore Police. We have paperwork for you." The kettle wasn't on, but I could hear the ghost of its whistle in my chest. I went to the door and put my hand on the knob. The day the door becomes a cage is the day you learn where the hinges are. And hinges, once you see them, are made to move. Paper doesn't make you safe. It makes space. That's what the officers handed me at my own front door. Space with a seal at the bottom. They read the terms in voices like level ground. Darius must leave for 72 hours. No contact. No entry without police escort. Surrender keys. Return my debit card. Wait for the hearing. He joked at first, turned the smile on like a porch light. "You're kidding," he said to the taller officer, then to me. "Ma, you called the cops on your own son?" Kiara stood behind him, hands tucked into her sleeves, eyes sliding to the hallway camera. I kept my hands at my sides so no one would see them shake. The taller officer repeated, slow and plain, "You have been served. You need to go." He tried a softer play. "This is a misunderstanding. She gets mixed up sometimes." The shorter officer looked directly at me. "Ms. Johnson, do you want us to wait while he gathers what the order allows?" I wanted to say, "I want the last 7 months back." Instead, I said, "Yes, just the items on the list." Darius laughed. Wrong laugh, and clattered around my house as if he owned the noise. He left with a trash bag of clothes and the look a boy gives a teacher when he plans to skip class tomorrow anyway. Kiara paused at the threshold. "We'll talk," she murmured, "when everyone calms down." The door shut. The red eye of the hallway camera stared at a room that finally belonged to itself. Detective Brown called within the hour. "Order served?" she asked. "Yes." "Good. Next, we get your locks changed, your accounts locked, your phone secured." Ms. Parker was already on my porch with a locksmith's number and a thermos. We watched the old deadbolt come out like a bad tooth. The new lock clicked into place with a clean, sure sound. It felt indecent to feel relief at a piece of metal, but I did. Marcus emailed from his work address, copying the company lawyer, a woman named Reyes. "We'd like your statement recorded and your documents scanned," Ms. Reyes wrote. "We will treat you as a victim and a critical witness." I don't know what I expected from a company lawyer. An icicle? A machine? She showed up at the church office with a flat scanner and a cup of coffee. She didn't presume I'd want until I said yes. "We're not here to prosecute your motherhood," she said. "We're here to follow money." She walked me through what they had. Ghost vendors, fake refunds, account reroutes, approvals forged in names that didn't belong to them. "We believe Darius used your network and your name to build a tunnel," she said, tapping a printed page. "He moved money through it. A lot." "Am I in trouble?" I asked, because the child in me needed to say it out loud. "No," she said, steady. "You're in a mess, which is different. Messes can be cleaned. We'll coordinate with Detective Brown. We'll handle the employer side. You handle staying safe. I signed releases, initials in small boxes that felt like stepping stones. Ms. Parker stood just outside the door, knitting in the hallway like she could stitch the air into something stronger. When we finished, Marcus slid a copy of the flowchart toward me. Arrows, dates, my bank's logo. His voice stayed neutral, but his eyes were kind. "This wasn't on you," he said. "You're helping us fix it." The next day, I did the hardest thing I've ever done that didn't involve blood or police tape. I told the truth that Darius had kept loaded like a weapon. My truth. The one he waved every time I asked a question. In 2012, after my husband died, I opened a store card I couldn't afford. It went to collections. I hid the letters because I was ashamed and tired and thought the shame would pass if no one saw it. Years later, Darius found one of those old envelopes while helping me clean. He never forgot. Whenever I questioned him, he would lean on that memory like a lever. "You of all people shouldn't talk about money." The fear that someone would know I'd failed made me quiet. So I said it out loud where it mattered. First to Detective Brown's recorder, so it wasn't just in my head anymore. Then to my pastor, who didn't blink. Then to my sister on the phone, who said, "We all do what we must to keep the lights on, and we all deserve better than having it thrown in our faces." On Sunday, after the closing hymn, I asked if I could speak. My legs shook, but my voice did not. "I once made a money mistake and hid it," I told the room that has held my birthdays and my funerals. "I carried that shame like it was my name. My son used it to make me small. I don't want weapons in my house anymore, even the ones made of secrets. So I'm putting this one down. I was wrong then. I'm not wrong now." People shifted in their seats, some to look at me, some to stop themselves from looking away. "If you're sitting on a secret that someone uses to shrink you," I said, "tell it to somebody who loves you. Make it old news. Old news can't blackmail you." After, Sister Ruth pressed her forehead to mine and said, "You just preached." The pastor wrote down the number for a counselor who works on a sliding scale. Two women I barely knew hugged me like we had always been family. Ms. Parker didn't hug me. She just nodded, proud and private, like the teacher she is. By Monday, the order hearing was on the calendar. Detective Brown walked me through what to expect. "You'll say what happened," she said. "We'll give the judge your photos and logs. Don't climb onto the witness stand with anger. Climb on with facts." She also asked for copies of the texts I'd started saving. Darius's late night, "You're nothing without me." The noon, "You'll be sorry when I'm gone." The morning, "You won't even remember this." I scrolled and handed her the phone like handing over a hot pan. Kiara texted too. "I didn't know it was like that," she wrote. "He told me you were forgetful. He said he was protecting you." I stared at the bubbles as if they were a person. What did I owe her? She wasn't the one who hit me. She wasn't the one who moved the money. She was the one who wrote Maya's care on a binder that made me feel like furniture. I typed back, "I am switching the lock. You can collect your things with the police present Wednesday between 2 and 3. I wish you peace." She wrote, "Thank you." I didn't know if she meant it. It wasn't my job to know. We had one more meeting at the church office. Me, Marcus, Ms. Reyes on speaker, Detective Brown in a second chair, Ms. Parker by the door like a sentinel. Marcus laid out the company timeline. Brown laid out the criminal one. They dovetailed like two halves of a zipper. "We'll file a formal complaint for financial exploitation," Brown said. "You'll testify at the protective order hearing. The company will suspend him pending investigation." A beat passed. "He's not going to like any of this," Brown added, not unkindly. "Liking it isn't in the statute," I said. It surprised us all into a small laugh. That night I slept with the manila folder under my bed like a child with a baseball glove. Somewhere around 3 a.m., the house shifted the way old houses do, wood settling on wood. I woke and listened. No keys, no steps, just the refrigerator hum and the neighbor's cat skittering across the fence. For the first time in months, I didn't dream I was looking for a door that kept moving. Morning brought petty echoes. 3 missed calls from unknown. A single text from Darius. You did this. I typed a sentence and erased it. I typed another and erased that one too. In the end, I sent nothing. Not every volley needs a return. At lunch, I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where he once spread papers like a net, and wrote down what I would say at the hearing in words a judge could use. I didn't write about what a good boy he was in 2nd grade, or the time he cried when his goldfish died, or how his laugh used to make strangers smile. I wrote, on March 12th, he took my card and refused to return it when asked. On April 4th, he installed cameras and monitored my movement. On May 19th, he struck my face with an open hand. On June 2nd, a package arrived addressed to a fake vendor name. I did not order it. On July 28th, the bank showed transfers I did not initiate. Dates, actions, the kind of language numbers respect. When my pen ran out, I took a walk to the corner and back. The sky was that blunt Baltimore blue that comes after rain. Ms. Parker waved from her stoop, and I lifted my notebook like a flag. She nodded and went back to her crossword. Ordinary things kept happening. Mail delivered, a bus wheezing to a stop, a child dragging a stick along a fence. It felt like a gift I hadn't known to ask for. The world doing what it does, without asking my permission, without threatening to take my name and wear it. Late afternoon, Marcus called with a new knot. We found a second account, he said. Not in your name, but your address. We'll send the details to Detective Brown. I need to ask, do you remember signing anything for a second checking account? I closed my eyes and saw the night he'd spread papers like menus. No, I said. Then we'll treat it as a fraud account, he replied. This actually helps. It shows intent. Helps. Intent. Words that mean the mess is being sorted, not just stared at. I ended the day the way I used to before life got complicated. I stood in the yard with my hands in the dirt and pressed a new rosemary cutting into soil. My grandmother said rosemary is for remembrance, but she left out the part where remembering can be a way of putting shame back where it belongs, behind you, not on you. I brushed my fingers over the leaves and smelled my own kitchen, my own Sundays, my own name without apology. People think the big moment is the paper at the door or the judge's gavel or the way the house sounds when the extra set of footsteps is gone. Sometimes the big moment is smaller. The minute you tell the truth about yourself so no one else can twist it. The minute you refuse to answer a message meant to bait you back into a cage. The minute your voice doesn't tremble when you say, "This is my house." They thought they could keep winning as long as I kept quiet. They were wrong. I was not loud yet. But I was done whispering. And the thing about a voice, once you stop whispering, is that it learns how to carry. They thought the hearing would shrink me. They thought I would mumble, get tangled, look like the version of me they'd been selling. Confused, fragile, grateful for someone else to steer. Courtrooms are built to intimidate. Cold air, hard benches, the clock that ticks loud when it's your turn. But fear only counts if you let it count for you. I stood, raised my right hand, and told the truth the way numbers do. Clean, dated, lined up. The judge asked for facts. I gave them. The slap, the cameras, the card taken and never returned, the for your own good rules, the transfers that moved like fish through a net. The papers pushed at me with the word durable. The first photo under Ms. Parker's stove light, the call from Marcus, the bank's freeze, the new lock that clicked like a full stop at the end of a bad sentence. Detective Brown entered the logs and photos. Ms. Reyes's charts showed the tunnel the money had been running through, One arrow after another, my account as the pass-through he never asked to borrow. Darius sat 2 rows back, jaw tight, eyes bright with a kind of anger that believes it's still in charge. He tried to catch my eye. I kept my eyes on the judge. Kiara wasn't there. I felt sorry for the part of her that believed comfort and silence were the same thing. Then I let that feeling go. When it was his turn, Darius reached for stories he thought could save him. She forgets. She's overwhelmed. I was protecting her. He called me Ma, like it was a spell that could turn all this back into a family disagreement. The judge held up a hand. We are here on a petition for protection and a preliminary financial matter. Keep your answers to the questions asked. It was the kind of voice that irons wrinkled lies flat. The order was granted for a year. No contact, no entry, exclusive possession of my home, immediate return of any property of mine still in his possession through police escort. The judge added a note about financial exploitation, instructing the clerk to forward our file to the Economic Crimes Unit. It wasn't a gavel slam so much as a door that stopped squeaking because someone finally oiled the hinge. Outside the courtroom, Detective Brown touched my elbow. Breathe, she said. I did, all the way down. Marcus and Ms. Reyes stepped into the hall with a short list of next steps. Subpoenas to vendors, a freeze on the fraud account the company had found, an interview with their insurer. We'll handle the employer side, Ms. Reyes said. Your bank will handle the refunds. She smiled, but it was the business kind, the smile of a person who knows the line between sympathy and action and stands on the action side. Refunds don't make you whole, not by themselves. But the first time the bank reversed a set of transfers and the balance flickered higher, it felt like a light in a room I'd been standing in the dark to protect. The security team deauthorized every device on my account but mine. New passwords, new PINs, new habits. I learned to love the friction of 2-factor prompts, the way they ask, "Is this really you?" and wait for you to say yes. A week later, a detective from Economic Crimes called. We have enough to move, she said. Words like charges and warrant entered the conversation. I did not dance. I made tea. Justice is not joy. It's alignment, heavy and necessary, like leveling a table that wobbles so your cup stops sliding. Kiara came with an officer to pick up her things. She stood in my doorway, not crossing the line. I didn't know, she whispered. I believed she didn't know all of it. I also believed she knew enough to have asked better questions. I wish you better, I said, and meant it from a distance. She left the binder on the porch. I took out the page labeled Maya's Care, folded it twice, and fed it to the shredder. Paper can't tell me who I am anymore. Church wrapped its arms around me without squeezing. I started seeing the counselor the pastor recommended, a Black woman my age who didn't ask me to be brave for her. We talked about how love is not the same as access, how boundaries are a way of staying close to yourself when other people get lost. I learned the difference between guilt, for what you did, and shame, for who you are. I handed shame its coat and showed it the door. Miss Parker and I kept our porch routine, she with her book, me with my rosemary. On Saturdays, we sat at my table and made a different kind of binder. Copies of the order, the bank letters, a list of who to call if something tilts again. We named it what it was, Maya's Power. No tabs about my confusion, just tools. We added one more page, a list of beautiful things to do when the past tries to get loud. Call my sister, bake cornbread, play Sam Cooke, water the plants, read Psalm 27 out loud, walk to the corner and back, and count the row houses like beads. I wrote a letter to Darius that I may never send. It says, I love you. Love is not a permission slip. When you are ready to be accountable, you can write to me through Ms. Parker. Until then, I am busy being a person. I placed the letter in the same tea tin where I once hid proof, because in this house my love and my boundaries live side by side. The company case moved forward without me needing to stand in every room. I gave one more statement. Marcus sent one more flowchart. Ms. Reyes emailed one more update with words like restitution and cooperation agreements. I didn't chase the news. The day I stopped refreshing my email every hour, I noticed the sound my house makes at 4 in the afternoon. Sun through blinds, a neighbor's laugh, the washing machine's last sigh. Peace has a soundtrack. I'd just forgotten it. On the first truly warm Sunday, I opened every window. The hallway camera was gone, a blank square where the red eye used to blink. Fresh paint covered the screw holes. I set out 3 plates on my table. One for me, one for Ms. Parker, one for whoever from church stopped by, because in Baltimore someone always stops by when there's peach cobbler cooling under a dish towel. We ate, we talked about nothing urgent, cathedral bats, the O's bullpen, which hydrangeas survive in this soil. Ordinary talk is holiness in plain clothes. After they left, I went to the yard with a new rosemary start. I pressed it into the dirt beside the old bush. My hands smelled like pine and pepper. I thought about the woman I had been. The one who apologized for taking up space in her own doorway, who handed over her keys because easier sounded like love, who learned to keep secrets to survive. I knelt there until my knees complained, then stood and brushed off my palms. Here's the part people don't put in movies. Freedom isn't fireworks. It's a series of daily votes for yourself. It's signing your name and meaning it. It's saying no without a weather report of your feelings. It's keeping the door open for air and closed for harm. It's a house that knows your footsteps and a life that doesn't ask you to be smaller so someone else can feel big. They thought silence would keep me. It didn't. They thought shame would bind me. It fell apart in my hands once I held it up to light. They thought the ending was theirs to write. It never was. The ending belongs to the person who keeps walking. If this story found you at the part where you think you can't move, consider this your sign that hinges were made to turn. Consider this your reminder that secrets lose their teeth when you speak them in rooms with people who love you. Consider the rosemary. Memory that doesn't hold you hostage, only helps you choose better. Thank you for listening to my story. If it moved you, subscribe to the channel, tap like, and leave a comment. We share many true-to-life stories here. Ordinary people with complicated roads, and the ways they find a way through. Your support helps these voices carry.